Cowboy Bebop is considered to be one of the best animes of all time by a lot of people. It has a mix of noir and space western story elements with a good bit of comedy all packaged into a cyberpunk futuristic world, where now Mars is the new hot place to live after humanity kind of wrecked Earth, and everyone is just doing their best to get by. And of course, this is also the same for the crew of the Bebop, what was once a small fishing vessel now turned into the home of the bounty hunters Jet, Spike, and Faye Valentine. And it serves them pretty well in their jobs as bounty hunters, tracking down criminals, old friends, or just trying to get enough money to actually have some beef in their bell peppers and beef.
There's no beef in here.
And while there are technically 2 other members of the crew, we won't really be looking at them today, because those are Ed, the computer kid who's just as crazy as they look. Seriously, what is going on in this girl's head? And the best boy, Ein, a Welsh corgi that kinda just got adopted by the gang after a job gone wrong. But again, Ed is mostly computers, so without using some weird, unofficial stuff that, while cool, goes against my rules, I can't do that, and Ein's a dog. A good dog, yes, but a dog, so we're not building them. But I could build Cowboy Andy. Yeah, no. But enough of that, let's get into these builds, starting of course with Spike Spiegel.
Haven't we met somewhere before?
So Spike here had, let's say, a bit of a rough upbringing. Being born on Mars sometime in the next 20-ish years, and I'm gonna be honest, man, I don't think we're gonna have Mars ready for you by then. But while there, Spike would grow up in the slums and eventually join a group known as the Red Dragon Crime Syndicate, where he would quickly grow to become one of the most skilled members along with another man named Vicious, which I'm going to assume is like a nickname or something he picked himself, because who looks their child in the eye and names them Vicious? But along with Vicious, the Red Dragon Crime Syndicate became like a family for Spike, and if he had kept going, he could have easily become the next leader, if not for one slight issue. Okay, well, maybe 2 issues. First off, despite both Spike and Vicious being in the running for the next leader of the Syndicate, Spike really wasn't interested in that. And second, Spike kinda maybe stole Vicious's girlfriend and then faked his death so they could run away together.
When this is over, I'm leaving the Syndicate.
Things didn't quite go as Spike planned though, as Julia simply never showed up to the rendezvous, and he figured that she simply couldn't go through with giving up everything she knew. And while yes, this is sad for Spike, and he kinda carries that through him for the rest of his entire life, this also leads him to meeting up with the ex-cop Jet Black and becoming a bounty hunter. And while there is a lot more to go over here, let's get Spike's setup done first. Okay, and real quick, I am just as bored with the basic human as I'm sure most of you guys are, but when a human is just a human, that's all I can really make him. So unless I say otherwise, just assume that these characters here are all going to be human. Anyways, take the tough feat for his human feat, this guy bounces back from life-threatening injuries more than once and gets back to kicking butt pretty damn fast. And while I could have given him the criminal background, you know, because he kinda was one, but he's also abandoned that life and really only interacts with it to cut out any remaining ties or track down Julia. So instead of that, I made him a bounty hunter background for the alert feat and these skills. And going off of just how Spike is, but also how he fights, I think his stats are pretty simple. He's a good shot whenever he does use a gun, most of the time, but more often than not we see Spike fighting in hand-to-hand combat or with a simple weapon like a mop.
Are all the employees here like you? You got some pretty classy moves for a corporate girl.
The more that you know, the shorter your life will be.
And he has at the very least survived some pretty life-threatening injuries, so a focus on dex and con along with a healthy bit of wisdom since Spike is pretty observant. And while it's not as big of a deal here, Spike also has a bit of a mouth on him.
You look surprised.
You look ridiculous in that outfit.
So his next highest stat after that is going to be Charisma, followed by Intelligence. Yes, he is actually pretty smart, but that's more street smarts. And he's dumping Strength because while Spike is toned, he's not really a big muscle guy. Now with that out of the way, we can start getting into how Spike actually fights. And like I said before, Spike was part of the Red Dragon Crime Syndicate, and during that time he learned martial arts, with his fighting style being very much based on Bruce Lee. It isn't about strength or power, but instead being flexible and flowing like water, letting him react without resistance and using his opponent's force against them. And on top of him being a decent shot with a gun, he's also a damn good pilot. One of these will get ignored in this video though. And even seemingly hungover, Spike manages to absolutely trash these very stereotypical Mexican bounty hunters without breaking a sweat. Also, like, guys, come on, you're giving the rest of us a really bad rep acting like that.
Just kidding. Just forget about us.
Back on track though, on top of his skills in a brawl, Spike is really perceptive, being able to easily spot Faye cheating in blackjack, and is also a pretty good pickpocket thanks to his days as a street rat. Oh, and while it's not like super consistent, Spike has shown the ability to dodge bullets from time to time, so we'll grab something for that too. Now with all this in mind, his background as a gang member, his very Bruce Lee inspired fighting style, and his skills with both melee and ranged combat, makes it pretty clear what Spike is going to be, that being a mix of two very dex-based classes, the Rogue and of course, the Monk. Rogue to cover things like sleight of hand and to give him an even sharper eye for spotting card counters and pickpockets. Plus, when things get a little too rough, Spike can dip in and out of combat pretty quickly if he needs to. And while Spike is going to start off as a Rogue with 2 levels, he isn't going to stay there for too long before he jumps over to the Monk for his training in martial arts. Those Rogue levels though do mean that he gets expertise in sleight of hand and perception, but also Thieves' Cant for his old Red Dragon gang codes, and cutting action for quick disengages if things get too hairy. But with that out of the way, let's look at the Monk stuff, because looking at how Spike fights, I think there are a few different options that could work really well for him. Like the Drunken Master Monk for when he's, well, drunk or just sleepy, letting him slip in and out of danger while punching, getting up from prone, or redirecting attacks, which is a big thing for his fighting style. You could also argue a bit for the Open Hand Monk, but that's really just the Monk, and I'm looking for something a bit more unique. And that leads us to the last of the 3 options, the Kensei Monk. And while at first I thought this one was going to be the best fit, Spike really only uses either his gun or martial arts separately and not really at the same time. And while the Kensei shot feature would up his gun damage, it's not really a huge boost, and some of the other features like sharpen the blades seem a little too supernatural for Spike, for me personally. And that means that I'm actually going with the first option, the Drunken Master for Spike. Between its deflecting and being one of the few monks that is actually really good at fighting groups of people, along with its flavor already being really fitting for Spike, I think it's the best fit for him. Now, Spike doesn't really make his own alcohol, but the actual Drunken Fist style is more about mimicking the emotions of someone who is drunk, not actually being drunk when fighting, even though people try to do it that way. And really, it just fits perfectly with how we see Spike moving during a fight, swaying back and forth slightly, barely dodging attacks, and so on. And the Drunken Master Monk has the main feature of the Drunken Technique, letting Spike take the disengage action as part of his flurry of blows if he really needs to. It's great at moving through groups of people so he can keep attacking, and at level 6 he gets the ability to redirect attacks that miss him to hit other creatures nearby. And I think something really important for this build, since Spike doesn't get much stronger from the start to the end of the series, is deciding where he is level-wise. And while usually Spike is doing 1v1 fights against Vicious or this lady here, there are a few times, like while tracking down Julia, that he ends up fighting groups of people. And like I said, the Drunken Master Monk is one of the only monks that actually excels in fighting multiple enemies at once. Obviously, I already mentioned features like Drunken Technique letting him move through a crowd, and we see him redirecting attacks with Tipsy Sway during the bar fight. And hell, even when he's just waking up from a nap while entering Venus, Spike manages to take out a hijacker out of pure dumb luck by stretching and punching him in the face. And I guess if we're taking that as a showcase of an ability, which I am, means that Spike would also have the Drunkard's Luck feature, letting him negate pretty much any disadvantage he would have during any situation.
I'm not dead, how about that?
Now, while that's all fine, I feel like ending Spike off at level 13 overall is just a little low, honestly. Plus, there is one more feat I think we should take a look at before we decide Spike's final level. And while Spike does have some impressive 1v1 fights under his belt, I honestly think we get a better showing of him using the final feature for his subclass during this group fight when he is mistaken for Vicious. When in just a couple seconds he wipes out the entire group with just one punch or one hit each. And the best fit for that is going to be the Intoxicating Frenzy feature, which would let Spike do just that, giving him an extra 3 attacks when using Flurry of Blows. And I know it says a max of 5 here, but this did come out before Heightened Focus was a thing, so I'm going to ignore that, meaning that Spike could make 8 attacks in one turn, giving that 6 of them are against different targets. Which does mean that the damage is going to be more spread out and that this isn't going to be as good for 1v1s, but Spike also does have a bit of a tendency to get his ass kicked in 1v1s, like with Vincent or Ed's dad, and while usually he still comes out on top, his track record does lean a bit more towards him fighting mobs. But if he is using Intoxicating Frenzy, that means that Spike is at least level 17 in Monk, combined with his 2 levels of Rogue, puts him at a total level of 19. And I only go this high again for that last feature. But like I said already, Spike doesn't go through like a big training arc to get stronger or anything. Sure, he trains, but it's clearly just to keep in shape. So while he might be resharpening his senses that he lost from leaving the Crime Syndicate, he's not getting all that much stronger over the course of the series. But just because we're done with Spike leveling doesn't mean we are quite finished yet. After all, being such a high level does mean that Spike gets 4 SIs to up his stats with and round out his build, all of which are coming from Monk. And while 2 of these are just going to go into his stats, one for Dex and another for Con and Wisdom, 2 of them are also going into feats. One of them is going to cover how durable Spike is, being able to push through and fight after being shot or just getting the absolute stuffing beating out of him with the durable feat, letting him heal using some hit die in the middle of a fight, kinda like a second wind for non-fighters. But more importantly than that is going to be the first feat Spike actually takes, and the one reason I got this is really simple. Bounties in this world must be brought in alive, Too many times have the crew gone hungry because their target got shot by the cops or this kid, or got exposed to the vacuum of space. So many of their targets already die in the chase that Spike doesn't need to accidentally be killing anybody else. And it's a lot easier to restrain somebody and take them in alive when they don't have a weapon. So for this, Spike is going to take the Martial Adept feature for disarming attack and evasive footwork to get his AC even higher, putting his dexterity at 20, con at 16, and giving him an AC of between 17 and 23 with the option to block attacks or redirect any that already miss him. And while the majority of Spike's attacks do need to be against separate enemies, that is still going to be 8d12 plus 2d6 if your DM lets you sneak attack punches, which I do, plus 40 for dexterity for around 92 damage a turn. And if Spike is lucky and he's fighting a bunch of different mob creatures that don't have a lot of HP, he could take each one out with a single hit. Now look, Spike might be a bit of an ass. He likes to mess with his targets, have fun with the chase before bringing them in, and hopefully walking off with some hard-earned cash. And while Spike has a dark past that he just can't seem to run away from, he'll always have your back once you've earned his trust. Maybe just don't trust him with any food. The crew doesn't need any more living mold monsters.
Hey, you should be grateful to me for staying here. Huh?
You sing off key. Well.
Okay, so before I even record this, I can already kind of tell it's going to be a shorter video. And aside from the 3-man team, there are a few reasons for that. One of those being that, this is being written just about 12 hours before we are hopping on a plane and going to Gen Con, which is over by the time this video goes up, and it's also over by the time I'm actually recording it. But we can talk about Gen Con later. If you happen to go and think you saw us, let me know in the comments, and if not, just tell me what your favorite thing about Cowboy Bebop is. Is it Ein, Ed, or the fact that there is an entire episode where the crew is tripping hard on some bad mushrooms?
Hey, the world really is a great place.
But the other reason this video is going to be a bit shorter is that the other two members of this team don't really fight nearly as much as Spike does. Sure, Faye gets into a few scraps and she's more hands-on than Jet is, but even then, most of the time she's only using the threat of violence to get her way and doesn't normally find herself in the middle of a brawl. Jet, on the other hand, definitely has the build for a more hands-on fighter, but outside of a few stray punches that he may or may not have even thrown, he's either using a gun, a net launcher, or a different tool that we'll talk about in a bit. And speaking of those two, since Faye is the last member to join the crew, again not counting Ed, since she's all computers, we're going to take a look at Jet Black.
Tell me some more.
So Jet Black, despite his looks, is kind of the mom of the group. He pilots the Bebop, cooks, does maintenance on the ships, and much, much more. And while him and Spike don't always see eye to eye, they make a damn good team together. And Faye's there too, I guess, whenever she's not running off with their money.
Yeah, women be shopping.
But of course, Jet was not always a bounty hunter. In fact, he used to be a cop on Ganymede, one of the moons of Jupiter that, just like Mars, I don't think we're terraforming in time for the 10 years for Jet to be born. But while on Ganymede, he grew up with a strong sense of justice and eventually became an investigator with the Intersolar System Police, or the ISSP, and would get the nickname the Black Dog due to just how stubborn he is during a chase. And while Jet was great at his job, apparently he wasn't quite as good at reading his family, as his partner at the time ended up leaving him suddenly, causing Jet to spiral and dive even more into his work, which, yeah, I can get that one. But this was probably the worst possible thing for Jet, since the work he was doing directly led to him being where he is now. During this time, he was investigating a group that, let's just say, had their hands pretty deep into the pockets of the police force on Ganymede, and were more or less in control of the whole operation. And with the recent mental hangups clouding his mind even more, Jet didn't notice that his colleague was setting him up for failure. And while chasing down a member of this group, the two of them got separated and Jet fell into a trap set up by his own friend, who then proceeded to shoot him, blowing off his arm so much so that it wasn't salvageable. And sure, the technology at the time was so advanced that they could have just, I guess, grown him a new arm. But Jet opted for a mechanical replacement instead to act as a reminder. And it wasn't too long after this incident that Jet ended up leaving the ISSP altogether, disgusted by just how corrupt it had gotten. So Jet left Ganymede, bought an old fishing ship, and started off his life as a bounty hunter, where 4 years later he would run into his first team member, Spike Spiegel. And I think that is as good a time as any to pause and set up the first part of the sheet before we get into his class and stuff. So like I said before, human for everyone here, meaning Jet is going to get the Tavern Brawler feat. Not only because his metal arm is going to hurt a hell of a lot more than a normal fist, but Jet is also just ripped and feels like the kind of guy that would hit you with a chair until it breaks and then go for the table. Oh, and obviously I gave him a custom background called the Ex-Cop. Also, quick side tangent, I'm really not sure how I feel about backgrounds right now, because I tend to just make a custom one to get whatever stats I want and give them whatever feat I feel is applicable. And while I do agree that backgrounds are where your stat bumps should come from, backgrounds don't really feel unique anymore. They used to each give a special, unique benefit in some way. I just kind of missed the little flavor features they would give, like apostles being able to get housing in their churches or having a criminal contact, stuff like that. But I guess it's more of a backstory thing and not a background thing, but either way I gave Jet the alert feat for his time being a cop and stats like this, with a focus on charisma and strength, since yes, he is a very straightforward kind of guy, but Jet also is a real smooth talker when he needs to be. Plus, like I said before, he's ripped. Now here comes the fun part, because like I said, Jet doesn't really fight much. He's usually on the ship, cooking, repairing stuff, or taking care of his bonsai trees. And since none of these skills really correlate to any one stat outside of repairing stuff with intelligence, I'm going to say the rest of his stats are pretty average, with a decent con for taking hits like a champ, good intelligence again for repairing stuff, decent dex, and then he's going to dump wisdom. Jet is kind of a weird guy and decides to follow weird dreams and gets tricked on more than one occasion. So with that out of the way, let's see what Jet actually does as a bounty hunter, since again, we really don't see him fight all that much. Where he normally ends up playing more of a supporting role, shooting from the sidelines, giving advice, and so on, plus he is skilled in a lot of random skills. But there's one thing that always seems to come up. No matter where they are, no matter what the job is, Jet knows someone that has info or can help in some way. Whether it's a cop from his days in the force, a local doctor that they helped once, or just some random contact. He's been traveling around the solar system for a long time and knows a lot of people, but really it boils down to just being good at gathering info. So if Jet needs a lot of skills, wants to be on the back to mid lines in a fight, and have a wide social net to gather intel with, I think there's really only one class that fits. Well, two, but I'm not making Jet into a bard, no magic, no music, which leaves us with the only answer that actually fits him, the rogue. But of course, not just any rogue. Most rogues are still going into fights with a very hit-and-run style of combat, but that's really just not Jet's style. So instead, I opted to make him into a mastermind rogue. And while I'm not too keen on his ability to mimic voices, I think the other features like Master of Tactics fit him really well, letting Jet call out to his allies and give them advice with the help action at a range of 30 feet. So Jet can give either Spike or Faye free advantage once per turn as long as his bonus action is up. Yeah, it's probably going to be Spike though. And on the rare occasion when Jet does find himself in a 1v1 fight, he has the steady aim feature for his own advantage or can use the cunning strike withdraw to get out quickly. And honestly, when it comes to shows like this that at least on the surface are more realistic, if you're willing to look past Immortal Children and a few other things, it can be really hard to make these characters look super interesting on paper, because a lot of the interesting stuff about them isn't how they fight. Jet isn't doing a bunch of crazy stuff that makes him hard to build. He's just a dude that knows people and has a thing for making bonsai trees. And I'm not saying this to detract from these kind of shows. I love them, and the characters are all the more interesting because of this kind of stuff. It just makes it hard to write these videos in a way that I'm used to. So with all that said, let's finish off Jet here. Given that he is a mastermind rogue and how good he is at spinning a good story and lying his way through stuff when needed, he's going to stay here for quite a bit, going up to level 12. Meaning he is still pretty strong, just not as strong as Spike. And continuing with the mastermind rogue means that Jet gets the insightful manipulator feature for learning the mental stats of his targets and some traits if they have any. And really, that is the last big feature for Jet. I know we didn't really talk about many of them, but that's it. He does get some better cunning strike options, being able to use multiple of them in a row if he needs to. And outside of the normal rogue stuff like sneak attack, uncanny dodge, or reliable talent, that really just leaves us with his feats. Which, funnily enough, is where we get a lot of Jet's other stuff from. Because like I said, he's the mom of the group and ends up usually doing a lot of chores around the Bebop. Cleaning, repairing the ships, and cooking, which includes his famous bell peppers and beef, usually minus the beef. And for that, Jet is obviously going to grab the chef feat, so when he does have food, whether it's bell peppers, mushrooms, or just eggs, he's got something to give the others to snack on. Along with this, he is going to max out his charisma with a +2 bonus. Again, Jet is the face of the group, and whenever Spike tries to talk to people, it usually ends up making things worse. And with his 2 remaining ASIs, he is going to grab the Artificer Initiate feat for Guidance and Identify, since his little scanning machine comes in handy quite a few times. And lastly is the Athlete feat, mostly because I wanted to make Jet a little bit stronger, and he was on an odd number, so I didn't want to give him a full ASI, but whatever. That is going to do it for Jet. An ex-cop who's just doing his best to earn enough money to take a few days off and not have to worry about food. Too bad most of their jobs end up being botched for one reason or another. So I guess it's just going to be another night of bell peppers and beef, minus the beef.
It's ready.
I'm just about finished. What's cooking?
Special bell peppers and beef. Asimov Solensen. He's our next target.
Listen, Jet. You said bell peppers and beef.
His name's Asimov Solensen, Are you listening to me?
There's no beef in here. So you wouldn't really call it bell peppers and beef, now would you?
Yes, I would.
Well, it's not!
It is when you're broke, all right?
What happened to the million Wulong reward we got for that last guy?
The repair bill for that cruiser you wrecked, and the one from that shop you trashed, and the medical bill from the cop you injured. Kill the dough!
Okay, that leaves us with just Fei Fei left. I would love to build Ed, but I'm not crying. Shut up, you're crying. But yes, Faye Valentine, who if she hadn't spent the last 50-ish years in cold storage, would be about 30 right now. Just don't ask her how old she really is.
We girls are different. We have to be pampered because we're delicate and refined.
Faye Valentine, the wandering, gambling, addicted bounty hunter who is actually from around our time, being born in 1994, only to end up frozen in cryo storage for 50 plus years after a spaceship crash in 2014. And outside of a little stuff left on an old VHS tape, or beta tape I guess, there is little to no info about Faye. Because as it so happens, during her 5-decade-long nap, the moon got blown up, causing a near constant meteor shower to rain down upon the Earth and turning into really not the best place to live. This also destroyed pretty much all info on Earth from before 2020. Hey, can I get that? I'd like to forget 2020 as well. But when Faye did eventually wake up, this left her with, well, nothing. No family, no money, not even her memories, as complications during the crash, or an issue with her being frozen for so long, caused her to lose her memories from before the crash, leaving Faye alone and lost in a world that, while technically the same one she left, was no longer familiar and seemingly had no place for her. Oh, and of course, because even in the future free healthcare isn't a thing, she got saddled with all the debt from her storage and the operation to bring her back to life. Talk about kicking a girl while she's down, right? Oh, and speaking of being kicked while she's down, if that wasn't enough, the new lover she ran away with also died, but he did end up leaving her with everything under his name, which, was more debt.
His debts? You have got to be kidding!
So, with a freshly wiped slate and more debt than she could possibly imagine, what does Faye do? Well, obviously she turns to bounty hunting and gambling. Whether that be at casinos betting on horses, no, not those horses.
You don't know shit about horse racing, man.
Or betting on dogs, Faye loves gambling. According to her, it is a lot more fun than putting in the bank, even if she does end up going broke on more than one occasion and has to drag herself back to the Bebop. And on that note, Faye's status as a member of the crew is shaky at best. Yeah, she's there and helps out with jobs when she's low on money, but she also has a tendency to just up and leave with no warning. At one point, not only stealing all of their money, but also draining all the Freon from the ship so they wouldn't have any AC. Truly, Faye is a spiteful woman. And Faye does this because she's scared of getting attached to the crew and being betrayed again. Generally, she goes by the philosophy of leave before being abandoned. Not that this really works, because of course, Faye ends up back on the ship anyways. And after watching an old videotape of herself from before the crash that had seemingly been passed around the solar system for the last 50 years, she does open up a bit more and starts to care about her friends and not just herself and money. Putting that aside for just a second though, let's take a look at Faye's stats and other stuff. Starting off with the alert feat. Yes, I know pretty much everyone on the crew has it, but life for bounty hunters is dangerous, and even more so for Faye, because before joining the Bebop, she had a massive bounty on her head from all those debts she never paid. And while again, she doesn't fight as much as Spike, we do see Faye get her hands dirty from time to time. So I went with Savage Attack for her other feat along with these stats. A big focus on charisma, since lying and deceiving is kinda her whole thing, a lot of dex for sleight of hand and stealth, then wisdom, and she dumps strength. Because, yeah, she's not really doing a whole lot with these noodle arms. Now, when Faye's out on a job, she really only has 2 ways of doing things. Well, maybe 3 if you count driving her ship into places that it really shouldn't be and shooting at her target, but we're not going to be doing that one. And those 2 plans are A, disguising and lying her way in so she can catch her target off guard and cuff them before they can even fight back, or for Faye, since her luck is so shit, her plan B is everyone's plan B, a good old shootout. And for her, it's always better to shoot them before they can shoot you. And because I have, let's be honest, not a lot to work with when it comes to how to make Faye unique in how she fights, I'm going to roll with that. Hit first and hit hard before her enemies even know what hit them. And for that, we have a few different options. First off, she's going to need a high dex to add to her initiative score, but anyone can do that, so we're going to need a few other ways to get that even higher. Also, side note, while getting to go first is great, it means very little after the first round of combat is over, so I want to ask you guys if there's anything you would add or change to initiative that might make people at higher or lower spots have different options to them. Maybe buffs, debuffs, different actions they can do in combat. Anything like that that comes to mind, let me know in the comments. I'm definitely thinking like a feat or something similar that gives you just a little bit of extra damage on a creature that is going after you in initiative. Anyways, back on track, there are a few different ways we can up her initiative even more, and one of them fits Faye very well. Letting her lie her way through life with a silver tongue, and of course, that is the rogue. Looks like everyone's a rogue today. Spike's a rogue, Jet's a rogue, you're a rogue, am I a rogue? But Faye is going to use this for expertise in deception and persuasion, for lying and just talking her way into places that she really shouldn't be. And of course, sneak attack, because if you manage to do enough damage in one go, then you really don't have to worry about your enemies fighting back, you know, because they're dead. Sadly though, the base rogue does nothing for initiative. So Faye is going to take her subclass in the Swashbuckler, which yes is usually for more melee builds, but she can still use knives and other stuff, plus no reason she can't use it with ranged weapons once she grabs a certain feat at level 4. And if you know where I'm going with this, that's going to be the crossbow expert feat. Use gunner if your DM allows you to use guns, but this one will let her use a hand crossbow in melee range without disadvantage. Combine that with the second part of Rakish Audacity and she gets sneak attack in melee range with her gun. But the first part of that feature is actually why Faye's here, letting her add her currently +3 charisma modifier to initiative rolls, meaning right now at level 4 she has a +6. And if being up in the enemy's face is a little too dangerous for Faye, she can get out really quickly by throwing just one kick, punch, or really any other melee attack she wants as a distraction and getting out safely thanks to fancy footwork. And honestly, the Swashbuckler Rogue is a really good fit for Faye even outside of the boost to initiative, with the level 9 feature making her even more charming, either actually charming non-hostile creatures or forcing hostile ones to only focus on her and not her friends. And lastly, for her subclass, she gets Elegant Maneuver, letting Faye just be better at acrobatics and athletics checks if she needs to be. But the more important thing from Rogue that Faye gets is going to be Reliable Talent at level 7. That along with the ASI she's been picking up means the lowest she can roll on initiative right now is 19. Her persuasion and deception checks are both at 25 minimum, sleight of hand at 24, and perception at 22, which is also her passive perception, by the way. And again, I know that after round 1, no matter how high Faye rolls, that roll is only going to matter once. But I still want it to go higher, and to make sure that happens and get a few other things along the way that are kind of fitting, Faye is going to jump over to another class very fitting of a bounty hunter, the Ranger. And yes, Ranger has spellcasting, but these can easily be reflavored if you pick the right spells, like Alarm and Hunter's Mark just being a different type of tool that the crew uses, or Goodberry being emergency space food. But what Faye is really here for is the Dread Ambusher ability from the Gloomstalker Ranger subclass, letting her get some extra damage and adding her Wisdom modifier to her initiative rolls, meaning that Faye has a +4 from Dex, a +5 from Charisma, and a +2 from Wisdom for a total of +11. And that is on top of Reliable Talent, meaning the absolute lowest Faye can roll on initiative is a 21.
Queen makes 21.
Or a max of 31. Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to get a shot off on Faye before she shoots them. And because Faye has so many levels in Rogue, along with a few other things, let's see just how hard she would hit on that first turn. Now, Faye only gets one attack, or maybe two with an offhand, but let's say for the sake of argument that she is using her bonus action to get advantage on her attack. She hits for 1d6 +5 with a hand crossbow, 1d6 from Hunter's Mark, 7d6 from Sneak Attack, and 2d6 from Dread Ambusher for 11d6 +5, or around 50 damage without a crit, or around 95 on a crit depending on how your DM runs those. Oh, and aside from the 2d6 from Dread Ambusher, she can do this every single turn, taking away a little bit if she needs to use Cunning Strike. So while Faye's damage won't be massive, it will be consistent. And this combined with her ability to lie her way in or out of pretty much any situation makes Faye a character that is great both in and out of combat. So while Faye might not know a lot about her past, she does know that as long as she strikes first and strikes hard, she'll be able to pay off her crippling gambling addiction for at least another week or so.
Put your hands up, Decker, my friend.
I can see the edge of your dragon tattoo. Hey, you with the glasses. Put a call into the police. Let them know I caught Decker.
Yo, wait, stop! Go!
What the hell's that?
So these builds were super fun to make, and while I did avoid talking about some stuff here because I think you should just go watch the show for yourself if you haven't already, I made sure to bring up everything that I thought was relevant to these builds. It was also a huge nostalgia trip as I watched the show again during the building and writing process for this episode. And while at Gen Con, I actually saw and purchased a Cowboy Bebop board game that you should totally check out if you are a fan of the show. But as always, I want to thank my testers for looking over these builds, Goblin for editing, and my patrons for helping me not fall into crippling debt while I continue to make these videos for you guys. That's gonna do it for today though. I will see you all next time, and as always, have a wonderful day.